So what did I think about John Sally talking about how Phil Jackson compared then Sacramento head coach Rick Alderman to Hitler, and Jason Williams' character to American History X character that Edward Norton played? Phil Jackson was truly a technician of manipulation. He really knew how to get at you. He knew what buttons to push. Remember, he used to call Sacramento a cow town, redneck, Billy Bob. He always threw shade, and he always had a way of kind of, saying things. It's funny because I remember talking to a good friend of mine. We were talking about Phil Jackson once, and he said, "Do you think he could coach OKC?" I said, "Yeah, they'd win multiple rings, but they too country for him." I said, "There's no way in the world he'd go there and coach Durant, Russell Westbrook, and them, because it was too hillbilly for him." And I said that, but I wasn't joking. Phil was a cultured dude who, he was from Montana. He played for the Knicks, and he thinks of himself in a high fluent way because that's how he sees himself. And so he sees certain situations, and Rick Alderman did have that mean-looking side mustache. I wouldn't have said Hitler, but that was a bit extreme. But that's the kind of mindset he would use. He compared Jason Williams, who was a.k.a. White Chocolate, to Edward Norton's character in American History X, which is Jason Williams is not quite like that at all, but it's the psychology that Phil imposed, and he knew how to challenge and pick people and know what the things that he knew what to do. He was very strong with playing media savvy games in the media, and he did that a whole lot. I mean, so did Pat Riley. They know how to antagon. They knew how to get home court cooking. They would talk about the rest. They would get the phone calls at home. You know how it used to be. Before people act like the NBA is so worse now with free throw shooting disparity, which it is pretty bad, only because of the fact that I say this, because there is no Shaquille O'Neal playing. There's no Charles Barkley playing. You don't have cats that you would have to foul because they would terrorizing you through the lane. Even Giannis doesn't get 20 rips, and he's about the closest thing to that, if you will. And he's still not quite to that. But anyway, long story short, you always had coaches used to always play in the media games and the little things that they would say. I've seen Steve Kerr do some of that. Popovich did it. They all do it in some form of capacity. You don't hear it anymore because you really don't have what I call head coaches that have that kind of personality. And I'm gonna have to do a video about that in the NBA anyway. And you could be Phil Jackson could be very polarizing. Yes, indeed. The Hitler comment about Alderman was a bit extreme, just like the American History X to Jason Williams. But John Sally was recalling the strategies and the manipulations that Phil Jackson would use.